Hey, how's my hair? I just got off the mat. Don't care about my hair. Okay, so today I know the last couple have been about meditation, but when we think about yoga, we usually are thinking about body, the physique, and there are so many avenues to study the body, not just through yoga postures themselves, but also through anatomy, physiology, kinesiology. I love evolution, and I love this woman named Ida Rolf. She created a system of body work that I went through and love, and I particularly love her writing. It's very technical. It's very technical, and you can see I've really marked up the book and done a lot of highlighting. By the way, this book was a gift from a wonderful person I met in DC who is a doctor now in San Francisco. Thank you, Nick. And I'm going to read to you a little bit about the spine, and which I think is really important. This is such a simple diagram, but I love it. You can see how the spine here is shown as a straight line, which it's not, but we can imagine it to be. And the skull, the rib cage, and the pelvis as being the major bony structures. So when we move our body on the mat, we tend to get really caught up in what we teach, which is great, like the vision, where you look, your drishti, how your hands look, where your feet are. But when you have all this external gaze points, it's easy to get lost from what really matters, which is your very center. In Ashtanga, we teach the bandhas, but even in not Ashtanga, you're thinking about the health of your spine, the straightness of your back, where your head is, where your ribs are, where your pelvis is. So Ida, we are on a first name basis. If she were alive, she would call me Meghna. She writes, the health of the all-important nervous tissue is closely tied to the well-being in the spine. And this I love, coming from a background in neuroscience where we talked about the brain and parts of the brain and really, really, really small parts of the brain, and never talked about the spine. Never talked about the spine. Only when I got into yoga did and I was into yoga, but when I got deep into yoga did I realize how important the health of the spine is. So it's nice just to have that reminder. Here and she's talking about the development of the spine. This I learned a lot in biology when I was in college and before that. One thing that she writes that I did not know is that your sacrum, which is the last few vertebrae of your spine, so your tailbone, they don't reach final stabilization before age 25. This is also true in the brain, that your prefrontal cortex is developing until you're age 25, which is why you make a lot of stupid decisions before that. But your body physique is actually still developing as well, which I didn't realize, and how appropriate that your sacrum, the very end of your spine, is still developing while the very top of your spine is as well. And she talks a bit about what it is to be mature. There's this idea that, again, when I was in science, I would have discounted, but now I think it's very real, that when we have aspects of trauma, our body freezes or takes on certain positions and forms habits in certain ways that locks in, now I'm thinking about my hair, locks in habits, postures, the way you stand, the way you sit, the way you speak, the way you think, basically the way you interact with gravity. So she's talking about working the body in a way that helps you achieve maturity, which is really interesting because we're in such a youth-obsessed culture that we always want to work to be younger, look younger, celebrate the youth, and we totally forget what it is to be mature, stable, and not so much working against the clock, but as perfecting and honing and creating a really perfect body, for lack of a better word, although it's a very good word. So, let's see, she says something else that I wanted to tell you that I thought was really beautiful. She's talking about the health of the spine, not as a merely physical structure, but also as a psychological attitude towards life. And this is written in the 70s, where they were a little bit more fluid than we are, talking about psychology. Now psychology is such a strict science, and the psychological attitude towards life, right? And then she's writing that poor tone is often reflected in lack of psychological energy, of focused, purposeful drive. Now this is something that is timeless, or at least since the industrial era. We all want amazing energy, focused energy, and we think about that now in terms of the brain, because that's what's hot right now. We're always talking about the brain, we're talking about the mind at the softest end, but in the brain. How do we get more focused? How do we get more energy? And so we're talking about caffeine and meditation techniques and productivity techniques, and we totally forget that your head is attached to the rest of your body. So working the spine, working the body in a way that creates good tone, good resilience, good straightness, maturity, letting go through the work of yoga, through the work of self-awareness, these locks that hold our body in bad posture or old habits that no longer serve us. And through the work of the body, realizing and reaping the effects as healthy psychological energy, purpose, drive, and joy. I went for 7 minutes. I was aiming for 5. I hope you enjoyed, and happy Friday.